I grew up we moved all over. My dad worked for energy. He was the environmentalist, so we were nomads. But I grew up in New Orleans East was like my first home.
Okay.
That's where all my family is from on both sides. My dad's from Ecuador. He's from Guayaquil, Ecuador. I'm first generation American on my dad's side. My mom came from a giant Sicilian family. And both my mom, very loud. The only way you get heard is at the dinner table is who talks the loudest is who gets heard.
Sure.
So I've never been told I'm a quiet person, and I don't think I ever will.
Yeah.
And I just found a way to turn that into a positive.
Sure.
But when I was about, I don't know, maybe about 5 or so, a little bit older than that, we ended up moving to Texas for about 4 years, a little town called Lumberton. But still, when we moved there, and then we ended up trying to get back to New Orleans, the closest we could get was Denham Springs, right side out of Baton Rouge. And even still, like, I never really got the Baton Rouge culture. You know, I never was big on LSU at first for a really long time.
Right.
Because weekends would come, we'd get out of school, we'd pack up, we'd go to New Orleans. So I was still, you know, we'd go to Saints games all the time. So even though we didn't live in New Orleans, I was always in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So I very much grew up on the Mardi Gras, the Saints, just, that culture feels most home to me. It wasn't until I got into like my 20s and, started having, adult friends and started going to LSU games and kind of, okay, I get what this is about. Now,
right.
I absolutely love Spanish Town and LSU games, and we've been living here since I was about 11 or 12.
What was the cause for the move in the first place?
My dad, he worked for energy. It used to be
so it's strictly job related.
Yeah, he worked for NOPSI. So when it got bought out by energy, there was a layoff and consolidating different jobs. So we had to go to Texas to avoid that layoff.
Gotcha.
And just kind of take the job where you could. My parents could not wait to get out of Texas. I loved it because I was always outside, but there was one school, there was a donut shop, a Dairy Queen, one neighborhood, and one apartment complex. That was it.
Yeah.
And for fun, it was let's go to the Circuit City in Beaumont.
Yeah.
So
okay.
they were so used to living in the big city growing up.
Yeah.
It was just very isolating, I think, for them.
Sure.
And they were just, not built for that.
You were talking about your own culture shock. Think about theirs.
Yeah, we moved out because from New Orleans we ended up moving to Covington, and then from there that's when we moved to Texas. And the Covington move, they wanted to build their big house and all that. And then that was, I really think, I was little, but I really think that was just a big culture shock for them.
Sure.
And it wasn't until I was an adult that I kind of understood that. Because it was kind of bouncing around, leaving friends, and that's where my focus was as a kid, completely self-absorbed.
So opposite ends of the spectrum, as far as your mother's side and your father's go, opposite ends of the earth, I should say, not really the spectrum, but South America and Sicilian. What kind of music is there? Is there a cultural diversity in the house with the music playing?
So, I knew you were going to bring up like music and my family and my background.
Absolutely.
I'm a stubborn little kid. I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket when I was little. I was terrible at singing. And my parents, I grew up listening to, I think my favorite song is More Than Words by Extreme. I remember being in Covington, being like a little kid in the backseat of my parents' car, listening to that song. That and a lot of Eric Clapton, a lot of James Taylor.
Okay.
Nobody in my family was really musical except for my mom's sister. I remember being little and seeing her with a little amp and a little microphone and a guitar, and she's probably one of the most eclectic people that I know. And that's my nanny Allison and my godmother, and she was a stand-up comedian when she was younger. Went from that to owning a preschool to being a singer and just kind of doing everything. And now she works at an elementary school. She's a gym teacher.
Yeah.
And that was really like the biggest musical influence that I had when I was little.
You're speaking as far as performance or just music that you heard?
My parents listen, like my dad, I love my dad. I know he'll probably see this at some point. But in my dad's office, I remember going to like the Energy Building when I was little. We'd love to ride like on the dry race board and all that stuff. But in the background, you know the music you hear in the elevator?
Yeah.
That's what my dad listened to for fun.
Okay.
It was smooth jazz. And as far as what my mom listened to as far as music, I know she loved her record players. She loved her, like we always had a big old, my granny is full record player in the house. And she would listen to older stuff, which I think is where, I don't remember the specific music she played on it, but I have this love for vinyl. And for all the old music and the pops and the cracks that you hear in it.
And a long sound.
And I don't remember specifically like what she listened to.
No.
But I know that I loved when she would take out the records and put them on. But it wasn't a very music-filled house. I mean, it's not that they disliked music, it just wasn't very much like in the forefront. I don't remember them going to many concerts or stuff like that growing up. We're gonna go rock climbing or spelunking or whitewater rafting.
Yeah.
They were about those outdoor experiences. I think I went camping for the first time when I was a couple months old. So it was more like get outside, get in nature, listen to the peace, try and find that quiet.
In your dad's defense, though, The Girl from Ipanema was a great track. I don't know if you're familiar. That originated down there.
You said Fernando?
Ipanema.
Oh,
The Girl from Ipanema.
Okay, I thought, I don't know. My dad's name is Fernando, and they had a song called Fernando.
Oh, okay.
That he said he grew up, and I think it came out in the 70s or something.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, he said when that song came out, everybody sang it to me. But,
So you move away, you come back, and the whole time, would you say you were more drawn to music than some of the other members in your family?
Yes.
And how many children, how many siblings did you have?
One. I have one sister.
Okay.
She's 6 years younger than me. And I don't know what it was. But I was the kid. I remember going when they had the costume contest in City Park. And you get to dress up, and I was just dressed as a witch. It wasn't anything spectacular, but they were doing a costume contest. I was about 4 years old. I remember I went up to him and I'm like, hi, my name's Erica. This is my address. These are my parents. I just want you to remember me. And apparently I got honorable mentions because of my outgoingness, I guess. Yeah. Music was kind of that vessel that got me there, but I've always had that, I just wanted to do something that mattered, something that stood out.
Sure.
And I was not the greatest singer. I remember being in 6th grade and I went to St. Jean Vianney in Baton Rouge, small Catholic school. And I remember getting up and singing Rocking Around the Christmas Tree in front of my class. It was terrible. Yeah. The kids laughed. It was It was awful. I remember the 7th grade class was like peeking in the window, and it was awful. And
so how did that impact you though? I mean, obviously at the moment negatively, but did it really resonate, or did you say
it didn't though? That's the thing. It should have.
Right.
It should have, but I was like, okay, cool. We're gonna keep doing this again. Yeah. With the flea market out in Gonzales. They used to do Prairieville or Gonzales, wherever it is. They used to do like a karaoke contest. I'd get up there and I'd belt my little heart out, and that was terrible. Yeah. And I think I'm more stubborn than talented. Like now when people say, they're like, oh, you're in a band? Oh, well, do you sing well? I tell them, no, I don't. I'm just really good at pretending. Yeah. I'm just stubborn.
These initial experiences that you had, you really enjoyed the act of performing.
Yes.
Did you notice anything else that was going on while you were performing?
Oh, I was very aware. Like
So
even
you
now
did.
when I'm on stage, I'm like, I don't see the crowd as a whole.
Yeah.
I'm looking at individual experiences.
Okay.
I'm
And even
looking
back
at
then, you
facial-
were doing this.
Yes. As I'm singing, as I'm whatever it is talking, I'm watching these faces and
Yeah.
I'm seeing these reactions, and that's kind of how I gauge. Okay, well maybe I should do this or more than
Sure.
this. So more than it discouraging me, it was more of a learning experience of okay, well what can I do better? And
At no point it dissuaded you, though. It was just,
No.
it was just
it
helping
should
you
have.
along.
It should have.
Well, I wouldn't say should have. I think for many it does make them question themselves. But instead of questioning yourself, you were questioning the art, just kind of hone
Like
your
okay,
skills.
well,
You know.
yeah.
Right. What
Like
can
how
what can
do I get
sharpen?
better?
Sure.
And then I remember very, very specific. So we traveled a lot because what my dad did for a living, he was an environmentalist. He traveled all over, the Southeast, and so we went with him a lot. Like stay, whether it was, we would go stay at family's house or go with him to the hotel, and there's so many hotel swimming pools that I
Sure.
remember as a kid, and we were staying in one hotel. And I remember my mom was getting ready to go somewhere. She was washing her hands or something. And I was, when I was like 12, I brought a little bit of Texas back with me. I loved Leanne Rhymes. When I was little, I loved Leanne Rhymes because she was young.
Sure.
And so I love Leanne Rhymes and Charlotte Church. And because it was really relatable as far as somebody who's young, who can, have these big, powerful voices.
Mm-hmm.
And because I always sung like way up here. And just kind of that nasally voice, and it was this one time, and that's what kind of clicked with me is, hey, you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Is I started singing something, and my voice dropped down, and I started singing more in like as soulful as a 12-year-old could be, this
Okay.
kind of more, a little bit deeper of a voice than I'd ever really used, and it was just like a parrot I would mimic.
Yeah.
And my mom comes around the corner. She goes, wait, what was that? Was that the radio? I was like, no, Mom, that was me. She goes, no. And so she's like, it was a different tonality than I had ever used. And she was like, oh. And I think it clicked with them too, because not long after that, they started putting me in voice lessons.
Nice.
And so I realized I don't sing up here. I
you
sing.
found your vocal range.
Yes.
Yeah.
I definitely have more of an alto. And like those influences as I got older were more Etta James, Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, and that had a lot. I didn't know that I liked all that until I met my first voice teacher.
Okay.
And she made me so mad because I wanted to sing all these pop songs, contemporary stuff that I knew.
Right.
And she's like, no, you're gonna do Stormy Weather. I think it was Bobby Brown, like the original, like Stormy, and no, you're gonna do this for your first concert. And I'm so upset.
Yeah.
Because she gave me the CD of all these Gershwin songs, and by the time I was done, I was just absolutely in love. And it's kind of like I found that little place where I was most comfortable.
This was also at 12 years old that you started?
Yeah, but between like 12 and 13 is kind of when all that happened.
And how long were you in voice lessons for?
On and off. Then I ended up studying at LSU through some vocal coaches, and I remember through those vocal programs, they're like, no, you don't need to sing here. That's gonna make you tired. You need to sing up here.
Uh-huh.
So I would try, and to me it was just exhausting.
Uh-huh.
And it was, I know you have to work on your vocal range, but it wasn't natural for me to sing in that head voice, sing way up here.
Was it coming from a different place in your body?
Yes.
Yeah.
It felt like singing here, and then when I would, sing more in that alto, more that blues, it more came from my heart.
Yeah.
Which, again, you don't understand the whys that you feel that way until you're older, but there's a difference in singing rehearsed music and then singing from your soul.
Sure.
And that's something that, you learn about yourself as you go. So I think what's really cool about music, about the arts, is that you're really, not so much you're learning a talent, you're learning and discovering yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of takes on, you started as one thing, it takes on, a whole life of its own.
That's what I was thinking to myself while you were talking about earlier on in your life, because what you were drawn to, like James Taylor and folk singers really, isn't what you wanted to sing, and what they made you sing to begin your lessons wasn't either one of those things. So, I mean, I think it's good. It's good to have many influences and kind of peruse all the different styles before you settle in on one yourself, especially starting so young, because you're still trying to find your voice, your vocal range, and things like that. And honestly, when we first started talking, I was expecting to find out that with the cultural diversity in your family, I was expecting to find out that had a major influence to one end of the spectrum or the other. Latin or Sicilian, but you remained untouched through all of that.
Growing up, there wasn't much like Spanish music in the house. I know, I've listened to some of the stuff that my grandparents listened to, like the older. My grandparents, my dad's parents, both my mom's parents passed away. My granny, I think, was 94 when she passed away, and that was 11 years ago. My dad's parents have been married for almost 70 years. They're both in their 90s now, and it's like some of the most vibrant people I've ever met. So I've grown up listening to some of their stuff, but like in our house, there was such a big culture difference between my mom and my dad that I remember my dad trying to teach me Spanish when I was little, and I got so frustrated. And because there weren't two Spanish-speaking parents in the house, I learned some, but I didn't learn. Like, I can understand when people are talking about me,
right? But
I'm not fluent in it. So there was my dad came here when he was little, and there was a lot of immersion into the American culture. My grandparents made sure that they held on to their roots, but it was there was a lot of gratitude. My grandfather came here before my grandmother and my dad, and it took him, a couple years to get things built up here before he could even send for them.
Did you sense that they were anxious to kind of fly under the radar as far as where they came from originally? What was the genesis, I guess, for the disappearance of the culture over time?
It's assimilating into where you are and fitting in, and especially that's back in the 50s.
Yeah.
You want, and I can't speak for them because, I can only, imagine or, surmise, but, like our last name is Calle, but, it's Calle. And
right.
That's the, I guess the American way of saying our last name. And they adapted. My grandfather came here, they were both pharmacists in Ecuador. When they came here, their degrees didn't transfer over.
Right.
So they had to start all over. My grandfather worked 3 jobs and went to school at night and became a pharmacist. He worked for K&B, nice. I think for close to 40 years. And like more than culture, more than music, he taught us the value of hard work and determination and all of those things that kind of, he taught us more than culture, he taught us education. And how important that is, but not just how important that is, but how fortunate we are to have that opportunity. So that was the most present thing I think growing up with my dad was, no, you need to, you need to be grateful for the opportunity to have an education, so you need to work the best that you can, because not everybody is so lucky to have the opportunity. That was kind of one of our main, what's the word I'm looking for?
Mantra, I guess.
Yeah, it was just kind of one of our core values in our homes growing up was education is a privilege.
Yeah.
And if you want something, it's not that it's unattainable. You're just gonna have to work really hard for it. And my dad ended up, my grandparents, instilled that in my dad and my aunt, his sister, and she ended up being a doctor. She's she's a phenomenal. She's one of the smartest people I know. And my dad ended up being really successful in his career as well. And he, they kind of imparted that on us kids. My aunt had 2 kids, and my mom and dad had 2 kids. And it's just whatever it is that you want. Like, they've never no, you need to do this or this. My grandparents, as strict as hard as they are when it comes to school and education, they're probably my abuelita, my grandmother, is probably one of my biggest champions as far as music. And then my mom's mom, you see these old school values, but both my grandmothers were so they were my cheerleading section, still are, when it comes to music. It's what do you need? What can I do to help you? Like, they're just still so supportive. So you can see that when it came to their kids, when it comes to their grandkids, it was how can we help you flourish? How can we help you be successful? And then that passed on to my parents. My parents are like, they're right there in that cheering section. They're hey, we're so proud of you. There's never been one moment.
Did that surprise you though, because they were going the professional route? You wouldn't think that they would be elated. Some people's parents don't appreciate the idea that they want to go be in a band as opposed to being a CPA, and we're talking about two complete paths in life.
When I was younger, I took it for granted a lot. I was just like, oh, well, these are how my parents are. Like, they would come to every practice, every performance. They were right there. What do it wasn't until I was older that I realized how rare and how lucky I am to have the parents that I have.
Gotcha.
My dad's my best friend. My mom has the biggest heart, and she would do anything for anybody.
That's great.
And I live in this little bubble, and it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized not everybody has a family like that.
Sure.
And
but I mean, as a result, there was no getting you out of this. Once it started.
It wasn't. I got in my own way. I got in my own way when I was younger. I was a mom very young. I was a mom at 16, and everything stopped at that point. It was, you're a mom now.
Right.
Go to college, get a job. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I really, right before I was in my 30s, I was in a not so great situation. And I had buried myself in complacency and just what you're supposed to do. And you're supposed to work this job and do this, that I realized, I'm not enjoying my life.
Yeah.
And if my kids don't see me happy, I realize, how often do I really smile? And that I'm a role model to my kids, and if I want to be the role model that my parents are for me, then how can I say that if I'm not following my dreams and what drives me? And ended up getting back into music when I was right about 29, 30.
How long of a break was that for you?
A long time. Almost 10 years.
Okay.
In between there, I did audition for The Voice and made it to the second round. I remember my dad drove me all night to Atlanta, Georgia. It was like hey, we're doing this. You want to do it? Cool. Let's get in the car. Let's go. And we spent the weekend out there. I ended up making it to the second round. I was sick before we left, and I was
sick with nerves or
no,
sick?
I had a cold.
Oh, okay.
I had a bad cold, and it's something that I've struggled with ever since then, because I'm stubborn. And when you're in your 20s, you think you're invincible.
Sure. And
so, I'll power through it. And ended up doing the audition. Ended up blowing my voice out. I went to the vocal doctor not long ago, and they said I have vocal scarring on my right vocal cord. And they're like, I don't know when. I was like, I know exactly when it happened, because after that I wasn't able to sing for about a year or two.
Sure.
And after that, I just kind of I had no I could not get I had no voice anymore. I would get hoarse when I would barely speak. I thought, okay, well, let's just let it sit, you'll be okay. I couldn't sing for a really long time, and it was devastating. So I buried my head in life and tried to put it behind me, and a lot of depression came from that. And then not just from that, just life. I ended up gaining a lot of weight. I've lost about 160 pounds.
Wow.
When I was younger, I used to just be small. I always took that for granted. That,
Yeah.
And after I had kids, not taking care of myself, not paying attention, just working. And
Well, like you said, you don't realize it.
You don't realize
it comes on
it
slowly.
until somebody shows me a picture from an office party, and they're like, "Oh, here," and I'm like, "Who's that?" And they're like, "That's you." And I'm like, "No, it's not." And I ended up weighing about over 300 pounds before I realized,
Wow.
oh wait.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I stopped working that job, started working as a bartender, as a waitress, and was forced to walk,
Be
to
on your
move,
feet
that I
constantly.
started losing weight. Realized, oh hey, this feels better. Let's
Sure.
keep on that track. And I ended up losing about 40 pounds. And then with one of my best friends, she was getting married. She started a diet, and I started doing it with her. Lost about 90 pounds in a year.
Wow.
And it was like that's when I started finding myself again.
Sure.
Started getting that confidence back. I'd been in some abusive relationships and had lost my voice in more than one way. And like I said, when I was younger, I never listened to anyone when they said, oh, well, you shouldn't, oh, or people's reactions. It was just, no, I want to sing. When I got older, you lose that magic when you were little, when the whole world is completely possible.
There's a lot more to consider. You're more naive as a child, so it's easier to be stubborn, like you said.
But when you get in a relationship, you give your heart to someone, and that person tells you,
Yeah.
hey, you don't
might
sing well.
Take it as the word. Yeah.
It was, you look stupid when you sing. You're terrible at it.
Wow.
You need to stop.
Yeah.
You have no business doing this. That I let people like that steal my voice.
Mm-hmm.
That on top of then damaging my voice later on, it was just like, okay, well, I guess this just isn't meant for me.
And that caused a 10-year break, you said?
Yeah, between that and damaging my voice, about
Sure.
a 10-year. I started getting a few years in. I started doing like some karaoke.
How long was that after the voice competition?
About 2 years after, so around 2013.
Mm-hmm. Were you testing it out along the way? Or
Yes,
anything? Just
yes,
kind of
I would
see
do
if you could-
karaoke sometimes.
Okay.
We would go out with friends, and it was, oh hey, so I would get up there, and I could do one or two songs, and then my voice would give out.
Oh.
And it was just okay, cool, this is just a fun little party trick now. I had done all these vocal lessons when I was younger. I had definitely expanded my range, and I could, for one or two songs, I could, belt Whitney Houston. I could, hit some Mariah Carey notes,
Okay.
but then because I didn't take care of my voice, because after I damaged it, I didn't go back to square one with vocal lessons and trying to take care of it again. I just kind of, I would do one or two songs and I'd be spent.
Yeah.
But then when I lost all that weight, I started gaining more confidence in myself, started kind of, okay, let's do this a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got into a relationship that I thought would be really great. What you're supposed to do. Domesticity is, when you get almost into your 30s, this is where you're supposed to be, right? This is, you're supposed to have this stable home and, this family unit for your kids, and I thought, okay, well, this is where I'm supposed to be. Happily ever afters aren't fairy tales.
Sure.
So you kind of settle for what's the least crappy option.
Right.
And you convince yourself that you're happy, even when you're not.
Yeah.
And that's how you fall into abusive relationships. It's without realizing, how do you boil a frog?
Yeah. Slowly
Over time. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh crap, and then you can't get out.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up happening. And I just felt like I was drowning all the way around. And I was doing karaoke, and some of my friends came up to me and said, hey, look, you have a good voice. Thinking about starting a band. Do you want to join? I didn't think about it. I was like, yep. Yeah, sure. Because I started, getting a little bit stronger with my voice. Just
I would think that it'd be you probably did the best thing unknowingly by kind of taking it one little step at a time,
Yeah, I gave myself the rest that I needed. But what I should have done is the second I wanted to get back into it was go back to the basics and go back into vocal lessons, which is actually where I'm at right now, because I still have problems with my voice, getting exhausted and tired out way too easily. And speaking with a voice doctor, she's like, you know what, it's not really your singing voice. She goes, it's your speaking voice. You need to learn. And I'm like, but I talk all the time. I'm an expert at that. She's like, no, you need to, like, your tonality and where. She's like, do you get tired when you talk? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I've never thought I'd have someone tell me that, you know, when it comes to speaking, that I need to learn how to do it better.
Right. Especially now where you came from, where you grew up, right?
Yeah.
So that brings us back into re-entry, and the band that approached you after the karaoke was the band that you're in now?
No. That was a group of people that I worked with. And it was a good band, but I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. So it was, you know, and I'll always be grateful, you know, to that, but, you know, for kind of bringing me back in there. But I didn't know to advocate for myself when it came to, okay, well, no, I can't do it in standard. I need to, I had done I had done a lot of choirs growing up. I had done some studio work growing up. And because even through those 10 years, there was still, you know, if there was something, I would try and dip my like toes in the water.
Sure.
And then just get discouraged if, you know, okay, well, I guess I can't do that. But I didn't really understand a lot about the live music industry. I was, again, always kind of in this little bubble. So you join a band and it's live stage, you know, it's live practices, it's and I didn't know what to ask for myself. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. So when a song was in too high of a key for me, it was, hey, can we, nope, this is what we're doing it in. I had to adjust my voice to them rather than adjusting the music.
Sure.
And I burned myself out really, really fast. Really fast. In the middle of that, I'm dealing with a domestic situation that was getting more and more violent and more and more intolerable. Like, it was just getting to the point where I was drowning.
Yeah.
And so all of these things kind of all at the same time. I was with that band for about 2 years and I learned a lot. But I learned a lot about how to adapt to being in someone else's band. We kind of created that band all together, but it wasn't as much of a partnership as far as, like, I didn't know to speak up and use my voice to, hey, look, this is what I need.
I don't think anybody, I don't feel like you were the what do they say, the square peg in the round hole. It probably, they would force anybody out like a splinter until they realized what they were doing to themselves, you know. So between that and at home, you kind of, that was reinforcing the same situation basically in two different ways. So
I remember being in that band at the beginning, and again, I won't say the name of the band because I'm not trying to,
sure,
you know, but I remember one of the musicians in that band, I didn't know not to put them, I mean, when I tell you I was green going into this band, you know, to cover my hand with the mic, and it would cause feedback or bring the mic down. It would cause, no, it was a learning. And I remember one time when he covered the mic and he said, if you do that again, I'm yanking the mic out of your hand and you will not use it again. And, you know, it was just very, there was underlying tones of negativity and
yeah, it's a bit much.
It was, I would leave so many shows just crying.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't fun. It was, okay, well, if you're not, you know, you get the looks if you did something wrong. It just wasn't, you know. And again, I learned so much. And so I learned so much. So I'm grateful. So I'm not trying to, but it taught me what I didn't want.
Sure.
But there were some really, really good parts too of it. So it wasn't all negative. It was a learning experience in a different way this time. But I was dealing with negative there and I was dealing with negative at home that I kind of imploded. The relationship ended really badly. And when I got out, I had to get out. And I advocate for women and men to speak up, because it's not okay.
Right.
And even if you get that something in your head that says, hey, it's not okay, it's not okay. Even if somebody's gaslighting you, telling you that you're being dramatic, that no, this is, no, you should tolerate. I mean, look at the life that I've given you. You should be able to tolerate that, okay, so I'm somewhat of an asshole to you, but look what you get in return.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Right.
It's not okay.
Shouldn't be
in any
trade-off.
aspect of your life, whether it's your job, whether it's your hobby, your passion, your life, even if it's, I've learned, toxicity, even in your family, just because it's your blood doesn't mean you can love someone from afar. Sure. You don't have to put yourself and your family in situations and around people that bring any kind of toxicity or negativity in your life. And people don't speak up for themselves the way that they should.
Well, like you said earlier, it comes on slow and they don't realize what's happening, and sometimes it's till
or
it's
you're
too
brought
late,
up in it.
Yeah.
Or you're brought up in it in your family.
You think this is normal, right?
And you think that, okay, well, this is, how this was in my family. So, okay, well, that's how it is. And, when I finally, well, I guess that's normal. It's just the things you tolerate. Nothing in life is.
Oftentimes that happens.
Yeah, nothing's perfect. So it comes down to people start thinking in the terms of, what can I tolerate, instead of what do I deserve? Yeah. And going from that to where I am in my life now is literally night and day difference. Yeah. And it's so just
obviously you were the cause for you leaving the first band, because it wasn't a comfortable atmosphere. It wasn't conducive to your growth.
It was a combination of things for the reasons that I left that band. Again, I don't like to go into specifics because I am a very much a believer in, especially in the music community, you build each other up. Sure. You don't, when you talk to a band, don't hire that band because da-da-da, or you don't do that. Right. But there was drama, to put it mildly, within the band and then the extended band family. Between that and then things ended so badly with my ex that when I got out, I had to get out. And I remember just crying my eyes out in the car. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't do this anymore.
So the two kind of went hand in hand.
It went hand in hand.
Okay.
It went hand in hand.
All right.
And it was also intertwined that it was. I always say that relationship that I was in, we were together for 5 years. I say I was in the relationship for 2 and I spent 3 trying to get out of it. Yeah. Because when you tell somebody I don't want to be with you anymore, and they turn your credit card off, they take your keys, they take your phone, and they tell you, go ahead and walk. Good luck. What are you going to do? Yeah. At that point, you're no longer in a relationship. You're a prisoner at that point. Yeah. When you try and walk away and they either don't let you or they make it so impossible for you. Because, again, boiling a frog, it's, okay, all right, well, your car's broken down. Let's get you a new car. Oh, we'll put it in my name since you're at home with the kids. Oh, well, let's get you a new phone, but let's put it in my name since I already have a plan. It's, let's join our bank accounts together. Oh, you go pick out a house. Whatever you want, but we'll put it in my name because, suddenly you don't realize all the power is in somebody else's hand until you turn around and you're like, no, I don't want this anymore. Yeah. And there is no way out. So it was, if I'm getting out of one thing, I'm getting out of it. I have to walk away from, I felt like I was dying. Yeah. I have to get away from all of it. And so I did. I walked away from everything. And it was hard. It was devastating. Leaving, as much as, that relationship was not good, that was the home that I lived in. Mm-hmm. As much as the band wasn't healthy, it was doing something that I loved, getting up on stage and singing. I had finally found that again. How am I going to walk away from that? Right. But you have to advocate for yourself, and sometimes you're put in situations where you ask God for help, for an answer. Sometimes you're not going to get that answer the way you want it.
Sure.
Sometimes it's just shoving you off a cliff because you have a hard time walking out that door by yourself. So it's okay.
Yeah.
Good luck. You'll be all right.
And your next, I guess, foray into music was
into Petty Betty, into the band that I'm in.
okay.
So the band that I was in, I played with. We kind of switched musicians. We brought more people in the previous band, and we ended up with a drummer, Christopher Lyons, and he's probably the best drummer that I've ever worked with. Because again, kind of going into playing live music on stage, I did studio work. I did work with choirs and stuff. I wasn't used to percussion and drums, and I just thought all drums sounded like drums.
Yeah.
And getting to know the different tonalities of how different musicians played. When we would have a fill-in, oh well, this guitar player played. It's learning all those ins and outs of how different musicians play.
Yeah.
It was something I'd never really paid much attention to. And when we started working with Chris, I absolutely loved his drumming style. And we got to be friends. And as he was dealing with difficulties in his relationships, I was dealing with some in mine, and we became friends. And when I left that band, we became closer friends. Mm-hmm. And we ended up talking, and we ended up dating. And I remember but nobody really knew at that point. Mm-hmm. And I remember Tony Busby, the band Downfall, he called up Chris, and he was like, hey, I'm thinking of starting a new band. At this point, Chris was still playing with the previous band, but because we were talking, they were giving him a lot of pushback, but it was not a great situation. So he ended up leaving. And Tony had called him up and said, hey, I'm thinking about starting a new band. I want to do something different. Would you be interested? And Tony is in Louisiana. He's one of the most talented guitar players that I've had the opportunity to work with. And to get a phone call from him to ask, hey, do you want to start a new project with me is,
sure.
It was unexpected, and it's, he asked him, and I remember we were sitting next to each other, and he asked him, hey, and Chris was like, yeah, absolutely. And he said, do you still talk to Erica? Kind of looked over at me. He's like, yeah. He's like, do you think you could get in touch with her, see if maybe she would want to do vocals? See if she'd be interested. And he's
How
like,
about that?
and I could hear him, and he's like, yep, sure, let's do it. So what we kind of did is we picked from different bands. We started out with Tony Busby from Downfall, Adam Hollowell, who is he did rhythm and male vocals, kind of a savant. He worked at Allison's World Music and could play almost any instrument that you would hand him.
Wow. What's he doing in your band now?
He ended up having to move away about a year into it and moved to Florida, and I think now he's in Mississippi, Alabama. But then T. Mike Galliano, he was in a band called Scary Lane, 80s like hair metal band, plays bass, a character. They're like, I don't know, you can't take a bad picture of this guy. Like, he poses, he's not just a phenomenal musician, he's just a great, like genuine, like you can't be around him and not be happy and not be laughing. And then Chris on drums. So we started out with 5 people, and we practiced for about a year before we even had a show.
Really?
And just worked and worked and worked. Okay, what do we want to do that's different? What do we want to do that makes us stand out? And we were coming up with names and all kinds of stuff. And we came up with some really off the wall names. And I've always loved Betty Boop, Betty Page, Betty White for her personality and sarcasm, and I've always had a love for like the old Gershwin, and always have wanted that idea of like dressing up and all that stuff.
Sure.
And never had that opportunity. I'm like, what if we did something like, one of my main things is I want us to stand out. I want us to stand out, do something to where when people see us, they know exactly who we are. And somehow Petty Betty kind of, and you know, everything was, okay, we have an equal membership in this band, an equal partnership. And for the very first time when we had practice, and I was like, oh, well, and they're like, no, like what works best for you? And it was the first time I'd been asked that question.
Yeah.
In those last 2 years that I worked with the previous band, the very first time, no, you're our singer. We have to take care of your voice. What works best for you? I remember T. Mike, our bass player.
Yeah.
You know, he calls me little sister. No, little sister, what's best for you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can move keys around. And they are so patient with me because we'll start off something, we play everything about half a step down. And I need to be a full step down, I'm sorry. And so they'll relearn it and do it. I'm like, no, wait, hold on. That, you know, because it comes down to, especially with having a deeper voice, I need it to be high enough to where I can, you know, grab those notes, but low enough to where I'm not blowing my voice out.
Right.
And I've never worked with such a good group of people that are just so patient with me. I'm so grateful.
It makes all the sense in the world. You're shooting yourself in the foot if you're not doing that, because the singer's not going to have the vocal range of every instrument, you know what I mean? So it makes sense to find where you're comfortable, where you can cover it best, you know?
And it's night and day
hang
difference.
the elements around it, you know?
Yep. And it's night and day difference. We've been together now for 4 years.
Uh-huh.
And every time we get together for practice, I look around at these guys and I'm just so thankful and so grateful. Every time they're willing to change a key, or okay, cool, we'll go over it again, or okay, yeah, we'll relearn it. I'm just the gratitude that I feel. And every single person has an equal voice. Mm-hmm. We're a family. We don't just play music together, we hang out together. You know, we've gotten to be friends with all of us together. So for so long, after Adam left the group, it's just been the four of us. It's been Tony, T. Mike, Chris, and myself, and then T. Mike and Tony's wives, and then me and Chris. So it's been the six of us. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Yeah, six. I don't know how to. Went to school in Louisiana. I don't know how to count. But it's been the six of us for so long that we go out of town for a show, and it's just we get together on the weekends and do crawfish boils. We're family now, and for the longest time, just been the four of us. And then in the last couple months, T. Mike Galliano is from Galliano. He speaks with this thick Cajun accent. I joke around with people because they're like, "Oh, is he from Australia?" I'm like, "Yep, way down under Australia, way down under the bayou in Australia."
Yeah.
And he introduced us to the newest member. Ironically, his name is Adam as well, mm-hmm. Adam Como, and his dad is a really well-known keyboardist down in Bayou, you know. And T. Mike kept telling, just give him a shot. If this guy can sing. So he came out to a show a couple months ago. Like, get up on stage, show us what you can do. And he opened his mouth, and he's the sweetest guy. I didn't expect, not in a bad way, I just did not expect it. He opened his mouth, and Alice in Chains, Chris Cornell, he had this belt to his voice. Mm-hmm. 90s alternative rock can hit those high, and just out of nowhere, it just blew us all away.
So wait, he's getting on stage to audition sort of as a keyboardist or a vocalist?
So I'd been saying for a while, I was like, my voice is still getting tired. You know, I need that little bit of a break. Doing 4-hour shows, we like to play 3 hours without a break, because I find you break that magic, you lose that, you engage that crowd. You want to keep building it up and keep building it up, keep building it up. If all of a sudden they're up here having a good time and you're, all right guys, we're taking a break, then suddenly that's everybody's cue. Or, you know, during a 4-hour show, a lot of bands take 2 breaks, you know, 2 like 15-minute breaks or so. Right. That's normally that second break is when people are like, all right, cool, time to go. We want to keep people having fun, but also keep these venues kind of having people there as long as possible, enjoying themselves. You know, yes, it's fun, it's a show, but it's also a business. Yeah. You know, they're hiring us to bring in, you know, to keep people enjoying themselves all night long. How do we do that? So that's kind of where we try and do things a little bit differently too. We think about ourselves and what we need, but we kind of market ourselves as a really easy to work with band, because we talk to our venues and our couples that are getting married, you know, when we're doing festivals, what do you want? What do you need? How would you like us to work the show around your needs? And kind of, you know, each show is just a little bit different.
Yeah.
So doing a 3-hour straight through show, it's exhausting.
Absolutely. And this year of practice, that preceded the first performance with Petty Betty, I would imagine that y'all are amassing a catalog to be able to run or hold the stage for 3 to 4 hours at a time.
Yes.
And you came out the gate doing that?
Yep. And that's where we didn't want to, cool, I know all these songs from the band I was in before, but everybody does these songs. Okay, cool. You know all these songs that your band does, but your band is still an active band. We're not trying to just copy all those songs. Okay, well, you're from an 80s hair metal band. I can't hit those notes. So it was, we're pulling all these musicians from all these different awesome bands, but we don't want to pull from all those set lists.
Yeah.
Now, starting off, and right now we're kind of in that revamping. Now that we're bringing somebody else in, cool, we can do all these new.
It definitely widens your range. Expands your capabilities, you know.
Yes. Yeah. So, but coming out the gate, we wanted to say we're not just limited to a 1 hour, or we can be an opening band. We want to come out the gate as what I did was, because I ended up becoming frontman and band manager. So I handle all the day-to-day, I handle all the booking. So when we started, we already had 3 or 4 months of shows booked up. There wasn't, okay, well, here's Petty Betty, one show, and then you don't hear from us for 2 or 3 months.
Right.
It was, if we're going to do this, we're going to make sure that, okay, we like this band, and then y'all get to keep seeing us.
Yeah.
And we keep our faces present.
Sure.
And our band name present. So we made sure, rather than kind of staggering it out, just get everything that we need together first. And we did really, really, really well for the first year, and then COVID. And we had gotten ourselves in a place where we were going to be doing festivals all the next year, and we had worked ourselves. I mean, in a year's time, when we came out and started playing, we did, and that's not trying to pat myself on the back of it, but we exceeded our expectations as far as bigger and bigger gigs and getting, you know, a bigger and bigger following. And it was humbling. And right when everything was gearing up for the following year, then COVID.
Yeah.
We had someone reach out and asked us to open up for a show that, at the beginning of 2020, we had someone reached out to us, asked us if we wanted to open up for Bret Michaels. They were going to be doing a show in Louisiana, and hey, would you want to be one of the opening bands for Bret Michaels? I'm like, yes, that would be great. You know, a lot of bigger opportunities, and then everything just shut down.
Yeah.
And even though it did, if you haven't noticed, I'm stubborn. I don't believe in can't. I don't believe in no. I believe in how hard do you want to work for it.
Yeah.
And so even during that, I didn't let that stop. I talked with all these venues. Hey, what are you doing? You know, can we do a live stream? You know, let's bring some attention to your venue, even if we're not getting in front of a group of people. Let's say, you know, you have your staff that's still coming in. Let us play for your staff. Let's keep that morale up. Let's do a live stream to where people can watch this. I remember our first live stream, my dad was nice enough to let us do it in his backyard. He's got one of those, you know, the twinkly lights and the big patio out back. And I remember we had to go door to door, knocking through the neighborhood. Hey, we're going to be doing this show. You know, it's going to be loud for about 4 hours. And I remember looking down the street, and everybody had their lawn chairs in front of their driveways.
Nice.
And everybody came out and kept their social distancing. Yeah. And you could just see it. It broke up that just sadness that was going on, that just kind of hopelessness and that scariness. And I used that time to connect with not just different venues, but a lot of musicians, and connecting them with different, hey, look, well, hey, we can't do this now, but do you want this band to do a live stream here? And just trying to keep everybody still connected, keep that music alive. And I really feel very passionately about embracing each other in the music community. I've never believed in, this is something that I work for. I'm not going to help you with it. I don't believe in that.
Sure.
I think we are all a community, and if we stick together, then because I do believe not everyone, but some places and some people. I remember there was one place where we went to book, and we're not all about money. It's about the love for music, but at the same time, if this is what you do for a living, you have to be able to cover the gas to get there. You have to be able to cover, it's at the end of the day, it's what we love, but it's also, we've created a business. Mm-hmm. And there's one person that said, no, we don't want you here because X, Y, Z. We want someone who just wants to come in, sit down, and play for the love of music. And I respect that too. But I feel like nobody sees the behind the scenes of what it really takes to build this livelihood that musicians try and build for themselves.
Right.
And there's so much more to it. And I think that that it gets undervalued a lot.
Absolutely.
If you ask $200 for a gig, you're not asking, come play for 4 hours. You're not just asking them to come and play for 4 hours. You're asking them to come and set up an hour and a half before, to tear down an hour and a half after, to get a babysitter, time away from their family, the gas money that takes to and from to drive there, the practice that they spent all week to work on these songs.
Absolutely.
And I think that working within the music and the venue community, building those relationships help each other to understand that value, and we understand the value of our venues, of our families, that, hey, we want to have a party, we try and work within whatever, their means are, because we understand too, like, your time, your money is valuable as well. Yeah.
Well, I think that staying in touch with each other and kind of setting your own personal standards as a band helps to inspire others that maybe question the practice. And it's important that everybody have a unified front to a certain degree, so that venues come to understand what to expect and not think that they can keep poking around until
you're not gonna,
right.
Yeah, it's
don't expect this. Good luck finding it, because we're all of this caliber, or
or if you do find it for this, the quality may not be the same as somebody who's doing this as their livelihood, and that's where it doesn't come down to cockiness or greediness. It comes down to, sure, you can do this, but then you're wondering, well, why don't I have this as a result? It's because same with the musician, you can't practice 1 hour a week and then think that you're going to be here as far as performance.
Right.
You have to put that time and that energy into it, and you have to know your worth. You have to know your value, and you have to stick to that. Don't let someone. It comes back to what I've experienced in the past. If you do not speak up on your own value, nobody's going to do that for you.
Right.
And within the community, you have to speak up for each other.
Sure.
Stand together. Sorry, that's embarrassing.
It's all right. I can cut it out.
The Harry Potter game came out today, so I'm trying to get a copy of it.
All right, that's ridiculous. Cut. No, I'm just kidding. All right, okay. So, what I would like to point out, a couple of things. One, I believe that setting a standard amongst yourselves and possibly keeping that up in your communications as well, excuse me, kind of reinforces the idea that this is a standard for an industry. And I think that a lot of times people don't realize, to your credit, like you were saying, bands are businesses. I mean, it's a passion, and sometimes it's a labor of love, but at the end of the day, gigging bands, true gigging bands, are businesses, and they need to be treated as such. You schedule things in advance, you agree upon a fee, upon an allotted time. Like you said, load in and breaking down. These things are all necessary, and it's something that it needs to be a standard. It doesn't have to be written in stone, but it needs to be well known. And I think it's important that bands stay in touch with each other and network, so that they all realize that, hey, we're on the same page. It's not just me, or it's not just 5 of us. Everybody else are scabs crossing the picket line, so to speak. But it kind of creates this atmosphere where this is the new standard, you know. And for the bands that are serious and the venues that are serious, if you want to work with a serious band, vice versa, then this is what you'll be expected to do, you know. And I don't think it's gouging, you know. I don't think it's extortion. I think it's just it's a respectable business practice on both parties.
And
you know?
you hit the nail on the head with that. It's respect.
Yeah.
It's respect. Are you going to go into a bar and their drink is $10? Mm-hmm. Are you going to negotiate with them?
Right.
Are you going to tell them, no, I'm sorry, that? Or if you go to a restaurant and you order this, you could go to McDonald's and get a burger for $1.
Sure.
Or you could go to Ruth's Chris and get a really good steak. Mm-hmm. Are you going to go in there and tell them that's not what it's worth, and then tell them, okay, well, instead of this, I want to pay this?
Yeah.
You know, there's a certain amount of room for negotiation when it comes to, you know, the music industry, because there's always ways to, okay, all right, well, this is what we're worth. So, okay, all right, if that's what, because I always tell people, we'll try and work within your budgets. So if this is what, okay, well, maybe not a 4-hour show, maybe we can provide you with a 2-hour show, and then, you know, if you need some background music or something, you know, we pride ourselves as a band on trying to be accommodating within reason.
Sure.
Because, like you said, at the end of the day, if you don't know your worth and you don't give yourself what you value, nobody's going to give that to you. It's a business.
Yeah, I think more importantly though, sometimes you need to instill a perspective in people. And like you said, they wouldn't expect to walk into a restaurant and negotiate with the waiter for the price of the burger. But for some reason, people feel like they can with bands.
Exactly.
And that's why I think it's important to treat a band like a business. You've got to frame it in some sort of societal norm or perspective to where people understand that there's a standard of communication here, and it's not going to be casual or on the slick or under the radar or any of those things. It's going to be, you know, above board, you know. And I also believe that during COVID, I wanted to back it up just for a second, because you talked about what your band did as a result of COVID and what you could see in the neighbors that wanted to hear this, you know. It was a sink or swim moment for a lot of people during COVID, and it was a fork in the road. A lot of bands, I should say. You could tell by the time the veil lifted who was hard at work that whole time and who just kind of called it quits. It was the genesis for so many new albums, even solo efforts from players that before just played in maybe 5 different bands wherever they could catch a gig or a regular gig, you know. And all of a sudden they're coming out with the home office sessions or something, you know. It becomes their first album, which is inspiring, you know. And the other end of the spectrum, they just kind of disbanded temporarily, but albeit permanently, you know.
And sadly, unfortunately, some people had to.
Yeah.
Because if your livelihood is, I mean, I heard it from so many musicians that, you know, I have to go get a regular job now.
Sure.
Like, and then once that happens, transitioning back, it's just, I mean, it's disheartening. You know, it's soul crushing when you found something that you love to do and that's what you do, and then that gets taken away from you and you have to go back. Then it's okay, well, maybe I'll just, some people got stuck back in that, you know, in that carousel of regular work. And like you said though, but it's, what do you do with that time?
Yeah. We
were given something that was so devastating and detrimental, but also everything can have a silver lining to it. And it's, you've been given all this time as well. What are you going to do with it?
For example, did your band ever have any experience with a live stream?
No.
There was no reason to, right? You were a live gigging band.
Yep.
But then you kind of found a caveat or a workaround and made it work for you, you know. Yeah. And that was interesting to see venues get involved as well. I think a lot of people were watching, and what the hell is festing in place and things of this nature. Like, what are we supposed to do? They're telling us how to conduct ourselves in our societal lives, but not our passions. It was not easy.
No.
So, and I told you I was gonna ask you about this. For people that haven't heard you, maybe you could discuss your style and also dissect between, or make the distinction between the covers and the originals, and where you're at with that right now.
So as far as what we do, like I said at the beginning, when we all got together, it was we want to do something different. When I say different, we still do covers, but we put our own spin on it. Just because that's how it sounds when you hear it on the radio, does not mean that's how you need to play it. And that's not knocking any musician, any band, or anything like that. But if I want to hear something on the radio, I'm going to turn on the radio, or, and I can hear that.
Yeah.
I love hearing how, like, I love now. So our drummer is he's got a lot of heavy metal influence. I did not like that. I guess I was indifferent to that type of music.
Okay. Wasn't your calling?
Huh?
It wasn't your calling?
No, it wasn't. I love blues. Okay. I liked some country. I liked, I was just kind of all over the board. But that screaming music, I just wasn't.
Right.
And now, like when I pulled up just now, like Pierce the Veil was screaming in my car. Mm-hmm. I love hearing how someone takes a song that they've heard from an artist and they transform it into what they hear or their version of it.
Sure.
And some of these metal bands, how they'll take pop music, they'll take Britney Spears, they'll take NSYNC, and they transform it into something completely different. Mm-hmm. And it brings a new twist, it brings a new excitement. And so that's kind of what we like to do. Mm-hmm. We mash up songs. So I take that blues influence that I love so much because I feel music needs to have a soul. If you have one tonality through an entire show, you become background
Sure.
music. And that's my opinion. Everybody has their own way of doing things. It becomes background. Mm-hmm. I want you to feel what's in here and what's in here when I sing. When our musicians play, I want you to hear and feel what they're hearing and they're feeling. And I hope that comes across. One of my very favorite songs that we do, and we normally do at the end of a show because I'm burnt out, House of the Rising Sun. Mm-hmm. From New Orleans. It means something to me, but we take it and I put every bit of soul and every bit of passion and we throw a rock spin on it. Johnny Be Good. By the end of it, we have double bass in the background. And it turns into just this rocked out party forward. So we take songs, and even if you've heard them before, there is a whole new experience that you're going to get. Music is an experience. Yeah. And for each person, it's a unique experience. For us, even if it's something we're going to take it and we're going to make it our experience and share that with you. So I always tell people, the whole show is a sing-along. It's songs that you hear that necessarily you don't hear at every show. Yeah. But when we start singing it, you're going to know every word. Yeah. Like we do Gangsta's Paradise and Lenny Kravitz's Fly Away, and we mix them together.
Oh wow, okay.
we like when you come to a show, by the time you leave, you go, whoa, that was fun.
A unique experience.
A unique experience, not just that, but life sucks. Life is hard. Yeah. Nobody said being adult was this draining.
Sure.
So at least for a couple hours, and that's why we try and not break that magic when we take a break, or we try not to take too many breaks, or for just a couple hours, leave all the crap, leave all the serious grown up, just leave it behind. When I was little, I always wanted to dress up. And, I had an obsession with Betty Boop when I was little. Loved Betty Boop. Yeah. When I got older, I loved Betty Page and how just beautiful and classic. And I literally morphed that into the grown-up version of, like, what little kid me would have wanted. And it's just, life is hard. you don't have to take it serious every single moment.
Yeah.
So when you come to our shows, we include you like family. There's so many people that like, I don't know how, and I'm so thankful and so grateful. We have almost 5,000 followers on our page.
Okay.
And every person that shows up, we try and greet you like family.
Sure.
Hey, like in between sets, before shows, after shows, you know, we interact. This has become our family because, again, life sucks enough that let's have a night where, you know, when you come, you're gonna feel like you're with friends and family.
Yeah.
You're going to be welcome and accepted. It's another thing that we are really big on. We will not play a venue. We will not play a place where, well, we've had some people that, hey, you know, such and such, I know this is this kind of, are we going to be welcome there? Am I going to stick out like a sore thumb? I don't care what nationality, I don't care what race, I don't care what religious beliefs, what identity, you know, you associate with. If everyone's not welcome where we're playing, we don't play there.
Sure.
It's a place of peace and of welcome, and where you can just come and just be yourself and be goofy and silly. And I dance around like an idiot on stage. Yeah. And I hope it's infectious. And when I see everybody else out there dancing, I'll get out there in the crowd and dance with people too. You know, if it's your birthday, you know, we're celebrating with you. If it's your wedding, we're celebrating with you. If it's your divorce party, we are absolutely celebrating with you. Yeah. Everybody needs a break from everyday life, and that is where, when Tony said we want to do something different, something that stands out, something that's not like everything else out there. This is become such a family and such a community.
Before we started rolling, you and I were talking about the idea of originals. Yes. And maybe you could explain that again to everyone else.
So from the very beginning, especially during COVID, I guess I always wrote poetry when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And that is something that's carried over whenever I'm having a hard time. I find I write from tragedy, from sadness, more than, you know.
I think a lot of people do.
I've had a great day.
Yeah, I think that's a
my steak was cooked perfect today, you know. But it's more, you know, those heart-wrenching moments that I feel if they build up too much, it can consume you. Yeah. Plus, I'm super ADD, and part of being like neurodivergent and ADD is you obsess over things. Yeah. And part of a way to combat that is you write it down. You know, same with, we were talking earlier about writing down our entire schedules. If it's up here, it's a jumble. If I write it down, suddenly it comes into focus, it's more clear. So I've always just written. And through COVID, I started writing more. And we have started working on some originals. And thankfully, we've gotten to the point where we are so busy, we are so booked, that it's become hard to take that time to set aside for that. Sure. Because every time we're getting together, we're like, how can we make the show better? What can we do to bring more stage presence? What can we do to have a more full sound? And then now that we've added a fifth member, Adam, to the band, he started off being a vocalist. Yeah, thanks. We can come back to that if you want, unless you want me to. No, that's cool. We had him come out to a show, and they're like, yeah, let's get him up on stage for a few songs. Yeah. And then we started talking. He's like, yeah, my dad's, you know, this keyboardist, and he grew up with that. So his dad has been sitting him down teaching him, and I have never seen anyone pick up something so it's in his quickly. Blood. Yeah. It's in his blood. Like you said, like music as an influence coming up. He can play rhythm guitar, which Tony has just been so excited about, because now he can take some of those lead, you know, licks and do some kind of, and he can do rhythm. Yeah. So now we have backup vocals, lead male vocalist, keyboard, nice, and rhythm guitar. So we kind of hit the jackpot with him. Sure. And he fits right in with our little group so well. That was our hesitation, was we have such this magic. Right. How do you bring somebody into that? We have no drama. We have no. Well, how do you protect it? I suppose, you know. Yeah. I want to, and that's literally what I've told them. I was like, I want to protect it, but I want to bring somebody in. Same way with, I would love to get a band manager at this point. Right now, I'm kind of doing all. I want to go back to just enjoying working on my originals.
Right.
And I think part of that is going to be getting a band manager, so that way we can work on our originals, because that's the next step that I want us to take, is working on our originals. To get to that point, I'm going to have to hand over the everyday to a band manager and trust someone with that. Trying to find someone is proved difficult, but that's kind of the next step. Once I do that, then I think we're going to focus a lot more on our originals, and they definitely have a rock blues sound to them.
Okay.
Tony, with our guitar player with Downfall, he plays in a rock cover band as well, and has played in many. I can't overstate how talented he is. All of our guys, and they bring in so many different unique sounds. Our bass player, he loves those 80s, those big, bold songs. And then Adam and Chris has that metal influence. Adam has that like 90s rock, and then I have my blues. So I feel like rock is going to be a very, very big influence on those songs. Yeah. But you're going to feel that passion, that soul, from that way deep down in your gut that makes you hurt when you hear it, but kind of makes you feel. That's what we want to impart on those songs, and that's me speaking. Everybody's going to have their own input on it as well. Right now, what I would like because I've written so many things, I think it's easier, kind of from what I've seen, because I've given them words. I'm like, here, write music to this. I think it would be a little bit easier, honestly, to have them write music and me put words.
Yeah, usually it's the other way around. Yeah. Because
I've tried it the other way, and I'll write 17 verses. Yeah. And the song just kind of goes on and on. I kind of, need a little bit more of those parameters to work around.
Yeah, no, I mean, my personal opinion, but that's the way I would do it. I think the keys, or the notes anyway, they give you a vibe. There's a lot of sharps in there, and maybe you're a little aggravated. A lot of flats, and maybe it's been a nicer, more pleasant evening. But
so I know Tony said he's written some stuff, and I know right now our guitarist and our drummer have been talking about it. So once we get Adam more assimilated in, because right now our focus is incorporating keys where we've had to compensate with more bass or more guitar, where we can have more diversity now. Once we kind of reconfigure all the songs, and then now we go, we can do this and this and this. Sure. Like one of my favorite songs is "Do I Look Worried" by Tedeschi Trucks. I love the Tedeschi Trucks band, and actually got to meet Susan Tedeschi last year, and that was I don't get starstruck very easily. Right. Okay. But I met her, and I just kind of stood there and just went, oh. And so
what happened to finding your voice and all that stuff?
Chris said he was standing there, and he said, I just heard you yell out, "Batty, Batty." And he's like, what was the question? She goes, oh, well, you played, they asked us to go hang out with them downtown New Orleans. Yeah. And I was just so starstruck that she's like, they were like, yeah, she plays music. And they were like, oh, you play music? And at this point, I'm still holding her hand because I haven't figured out how to let go. And she's like, what band do you play with? I'm like, in my head, I'm going, all right, you forgot the name of your band. You forgot the name of your band. And it just kind of blurted it out.
Hit you hard, huh?
And it was one of those moments where I see somebody on stage pouring their whole heart and soul out the way that I try to. Yeah. Definitely one of my role models. And it was just one of those surreal moments where it was like, I didn't know how to react.
You still take it in even after it's all over.
Oh,
you're still
I got the set list.
Yeah.
I got the set list. I collect set lists from concerts. Okay. So far, I have Jerry Cantrell and Tedeschi Trucks and some 41. I have a whole mix of Calle is another one of my right now. I don't know if you've heard his music. No. Calle and Bishop Briggs. If kind of my music influence, that would be the best to kind of pinpoint. It's blues, rock. Calle is it's an Icelandic band, and they are just absolutely phenomenal. And I got to see them in concert, and that's where you take your influence and you see like what makes you move. Like that's what you want to impart on the people that you put on shows from too. Hey, I want to move people like that.
Sure. I kind of feel like it's like dreams, and we're sponges, and we take in all of these different elements throughout the courses of our lives, and whatever drips out the bottom is our own, you know. It's our own version of things, you know. The same goes with music and inspiration, I think. But well, so that's awesome. I appreciate your time. Thank you for sitting down and talking to me.
Thank you so much for coming out here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.